distance. NaturalsRadio.com.
Okay, Monday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with you. Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the West Coast of the contiguous United States of America. It is Metaphor Monday here on the After Show. We really attempt to not use the simile, but only the metaphor.
Yeah.
Now, there are no absolutes in the universe, as our mentors or adults in our lives would tell us as we grew. But we'll try not to do it. It's a Metaphor Monday, and this is the day we call things what they are. And I want to know how you are, Wink. How are you?
Not bad. It is 49 degrees, going towards 55, 56. So it's a typical April day, late April, whatever. Not bad. Sunny out there, too. Sunshine, so I can actually maybe get some yard work done today. More yard work done. Almost done with that anyway. We almost got that done finally. Remind you to get in the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And to the leftish of the chat room link are the donate contribute buttons. And thank you for your generosity. It is we're unable to do it truly without you.
Yes.
In this mini fund drive to upgrade hardware and software. The Resistance, they make the Resistance pay bills too.
Yeah, they do.
And there's no we can't even get NGO status. Jeez.
No. Hell no.
And maybe for good reason. Of course, they let those bros out of Florida become arms dealers, but they did go to jail, so there was that. But well, here along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently 45 degrees. We are slated for a high of 56. Oh, yeah. Winds, looks like they'll just be variable, but hardly discernible currently. Visibility is at 10 miles, and we have rain. Right now, it's drizzling right now. But looks like we will have rain for a few days. Looks like the weekend is going to be nice and at least partly sunny or partly cloudy, depending on your point of view.
There you go.
But I guess I will not be getting out into the yard and mowing it today. And I got to tell you, it needs it. Over the weekend, I did. I dug 25 holes in what I describe as root-webbed rocky soil, meaning it was difficult. Because, you dig, then you got to hack, and then you got to cut, and take a lopper and try to get that root, and that's going to take a saw instead, and you know what it's like. But I'm not a young man anymore, Wink. Well, I did it, and then I planted 25 privets, bare root. Then, you got to condition the soil, so there's a little bit of effort involved. Now, I did take care of myself. I sat in the massage chair. It it's not so bad. It works out the back and all that, and really just pressures the legs enough to keep circulation going. Not anything that I would call an adequate leg massage.
Right.
But what it does for the lumbar region all the way up into the neck, and you can get a pretty good neck and head massage, on the back too with these chairs.
There you go. Yep.
I was able to sleep and got actual restful sleep. Normally, what would have occurred, I would have been cramping up. My toes would have cramped and it would have woken me up. I would have gotten a Charlie horse and my hammy. I mean, just,
yeah,
I hate that. So, I turned 62 this year, and I'm thinking I might still have it. I still got it. And then, of course, today yesterday I felt pretty good. And today, I mean, when I say pretty good, I could still tell that, oh, yeah, good thing I sat in the chair. What would I be feeling like if I hadn't?
Right.
So I'm sorry that I'm filling in people about things you probably already know about, and that's the aging process. Sorry for reminding you. Yeah. Look, I've been an immortal for a long time, and I accepted long ago that even though I am an immortal, you still break bones and get scarred up, Yeah. And they never tell you. You may live forever, but you're still going to feel pain.
Right.
Lots of it. And then the other thing they didn't tell you is that you wouldn't keep your youthful 25 to 35-year-old look.
Right.
Damn them.
Yeah.
Damn
exactly.
them.
Yeah.
So now I'm, and this is the other thing, Link. This is the other thing they don't tell you. Like, you can go right past the distinguished look into decrepit in just a matter of like months to a couple of years sometimes.
It doesn't take long.
Just right past distinguished.
Yep.
Oh, well, now I'm going to have to just be one of those wise elders. Or, as they like to say in our town, the town crank.
Yeah.
Wise elder, town crank. Yeah, there's a thin line between wise elder and town crank also. Well, speaking of which, these are the issues we will be attending to today, and they are. I mean, we had a busy weekend again, and the big news, I suppose, every morning when we wake up and it's raining and the leaves aren't being burned by any kind of atomic acid nuclear rain.
Right.
I consider that to be a good day. We're alive again.
Yeah.
And anything could have happened over the weekend. When you leave that guy alone, that's when his staff says he's the most dangerous. They got to, keep him occupied. Scary. Okay.
Yeah, when he's in Florida, anything can happen.
Anywhere. All right. Well, citing free speech, 11 Republican attorneys general want to stop the investigation into Exxon over lying to its shareholders and the public. I think lying to the shareholders is the bigger one here. Lying to the public. That's like a description for The Office, isn't it? Well, these attorneys generals want to stop the lawsuit against Exxon for lying to its shareholders and the public about the risk that they were going to embark upon and lying to them about climate change. Because they have a free speech right to essentially lie to their shareholders, which it doesn't make sense, if you ask me, because I thought that's what their charters were to prevent. Well, I'm a romantic on that. Department of Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly says he doesn't know how to stop domestic terrorism if it isn't done by brown people at a border. He said this on TV. What the hell? And U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, I shouldn't be calling him that. I should just say Jeff Sessions.
Right.
Accuses the New York City Police Department of being ineffectual in stemming the city's murder rate that doesn't exist. It's hard to stem a murder epidemic when there's no murder epidemic going on. This guy's got to stop watching the black exploitation movies from the 70s, because he's still, I don't know, he sees that and he goes, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I don't know.
Yeah, bring in the troops, yeah.
He wants to protect us from microscopic terrorists, Wink. A microscopic terrorist filth oozing across the border, infecting our purity and wanting to marry our daughters. And he's the top law enforcement officer. Too racist to be a judge. Let's make him a cop instead. Okay. For the last half, we're going to report that carrier workers are not really happy about losing their job after Trump's great deal. You know, the one where he went for the photo op?
Oh, yeah.
Said he was saving like several thousand jobs, and it turned out to be only 800 jobs. And those 800 jobs are gone now, too. Oops.
Yeah. Thank you very much, yeah.
And the second round of the French elections, you know, because they have the first round, right? Now they're going to have a second round in just a couple of weeks. Well, that's going to be the far right versus the European Union. Yes, get ready to rumble! And all that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar and more. Did I say community or community? Community calendar and more. On the after show with that ever so fine fellow over there on the East Coast. And his name is Wink, and this guy back over here on the West Coast. My name is Justice, and we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this particular, specific, and peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time, as Prince would say, Purple Rain Baby, or Who Loves You, Baby.
Yeah.
We could have had Prince, but I like Kojak because, you know, I don't know, he's an intersectional male. I like him. Yeah, I know it's hard to imagine that Kojak would be an intersectional male, but you know, you gotta squint a little bit, and then you'll see it.
He's there. Oh yeah.
You'll see it. Okay. Well. We had Earth Day over the weekend, and the Science March brought out. You know what? It looked like about 2/3 more than the Trump supporters who believe that the Earth is flat.
Right.
So I think science has a mandate. And then there was the complaints, if scientists march, it's going to be political. And I go, what's more political than incarcerating Galileo for saying that, you know, the Earth is round?
Right.
You know, that sounds pretty political to me. Science political. When has it not been political? Give me an effing break.
Okay.
If they go out there, people won't trust them in the scientific method. Oh, really? You mean the kinds of science that allows grandma and grandpa to live because heart surgeries are like outpatient procedures now? You mean that kind of lack of trust? Well, I just think that it belies this attitude that, you know, the most important voter in America is the Trump voter. Only their opinions matter, right?
Right.
When you have these, you know, tens of thousands of people in the street isn't even describing the vast numbers of them. I mean, that Chicago rally was enormous. You know, I'm just saying. Okay. Citing free speech. And this is by Samantha Page from Think Progress. On behalf of the public, they want to stop an investigation into a corporation. You know, usually the attorneys generals are there to protect the people from the corporations. But in the topsy-turvy universe that we live in, which I call the specific tear, or maybe it's the peculiar tear. It's the peculiar tear in the fabric of space-time. 11 attorneys generals say, hey, the corporation has a free speech right to lie to you rubes. If there's a profit involved, they'll bend to any kind of pretzel configuration to make that one work.
Right.
Citing ExxonMobil's right to free speech, 11 state attorneys general, all Republicans, filed in court this week to stop an investigation into the oil and gas giant's decades-long history of climate denial. Well, that's a nice way of calling it a lie. The attorneys general from Alabama, Arizona. She's doing this in alphabetical order. I love this. Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Texas, Utah, and Wisconsin. Has a kind of cadence to it. Filed a brief to support Exxon's request to stop the so-called Exxon New investigation. I don't know. I kind of like calling it. Exxon lied for decades about the risk involved, and you guys lost a bunch of money, and now you're only finding out. But I don't know. That's not as catchy, I suppose. And they're arguing that there is a public policy debate over climate change and that the investigation is an unconstitutional abuse of power. How dare government step in to protect the people? How dare they? Don't you know that commerce is involved here? The Republican Attorney General says that the Constitution was written to protect citizens from government witch hunts, such as this one. What? Where officials use their authority and the threat of criminal prosecution to try and suppress speech on a viewpoint they disagree with. Oh, you mean like gases in the air poisoning people? Yeah, that's an opinion, isn't it? And that statement was by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who himself is embroiled in a Securities Exchange Commission lawsuit that could send him to jail. Felony. For what? Yes, lying to his partners in a business transaction. And lying on the filings for the profits he made. It's not lying, it's a free speech right. Come on. Witch hunt. The investigation, now spearheaded by Democratic State Attorneys General Eric Schneiderman of New York and Maura Healey of Massachusetts, was prompted after the Los Angeles Times and Inside Climate News independently discovered they had independent investigations week. They had no idea that they were both working on the same. See, this is how it works like in Hollywood. Like two similar movies are being produced, and sometimes it takes 5 years. And one studio really doesn't know that the other studio is doing this. It's because there's like a theme in the creative atmosphere. Things in the air that people are picking up on. Jung would call that synchronicity, or an example that the universal mind exists. So much for that specific tear in the fabric of space-time. Makes it very peculiar, doesn't it? As discovered that as far back as the 70s, Exxon scientists were aware of the role burning fossil fuels plays in climate change. Exxon subsequently funded organizations that publicly deny the science behind human-caused climate change. Because I also remember back in the day when they were embracing climate change as a way to, get rid of all that ice so we could finally get that Northwest Passage.
Heck yeah.
And they have it now. I think they should put that in the prospectus. We succeeded in terraforming. Now we can move container ships of, all sorts of inferior material so the people can buy it.
Yep.
Why not? As a publicly traded company, Exxon has a legal requirement to disclose risk. Therefore, prosecutors are investigating whether the corporation knowingly misled investors over the long-term risk of climate change. Maybe they figure, when the coastlines are inundated, we have to build new cities. There's jobs. It says right here, we assess the risk and we figured there's an upside to this. There's always an upside, Wink. Exxon filed this lawsuit challenging the investigation in Texas of last year, but recently the judge in the case opted to move the suit to the U.S. District Court in Manhattan. Yeah, yikes. I like that. After challenging the New York and Massachusetts subpoena, Exxon was ordered to hand over emails and documents related to the climate change communications, and they are voluminous. Okay, well, Schneiderman's office reached a settlement in 2015 with Peabody Coal after a multi-year investigation found that company had violated state law by misleading shareholders about the risk to the company over climate change and efforts to stop climate change. And, environmental groups were not quite as diplomatic with Let's see, Amy Spitlanik, who is a spokesperson for the Attorney General's office, saying we will continue to pursue our fraud investigation under New York law, despite attempts by Exxon and Big Oil's beneficiaries to delay and distract from the serious issues at hand. And so the environmental groups are not quite as diplomatic, responding to a line in the brief suggesting that, quote, climate change is the subject of legitimate international debate, end quote. California Hawks Vote, a California group that has pressed the California Attorney General to also pursue an investigation into Exxon, issued the following statement. What effing debate? Subject of legitimate international debate. And they said, what effing debate? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, the New York Attorney General's office really has to be a little bit more diplomatic than that. So, but that's essentially what she was saying. Yeah. Misleading from these serious concerns is, hey, there's no effing debate. You know, water is wet, okay? And water that's wet that has a bunch of acid in it's going to burn your skin. Debate that. And they'll say, well, we'll be able to sell acid rain repellent paints.
Right.
And clothing, outerwear. Come on. There's an upside wink. Learn to adapt.
Yes, a feature. Yeah.
That's right. If you've been able to change your environment is like, kind of pissed off and, getting back at you. You just got to, up the ante a little bit. You show the environment who's boss. All right? See how that's going to work out. John Kelly doesn't know how to stop homegrown domestic terrorists, especially if they're white. Oh, this is by our good friend Carolee Coons over at Cricks and Liars. This week, DHS Secretary John Kelly has made a lot of noise about the fact that sweeping raids and deportations are working, but it's all smoke for a far larger problem. As Kelly admitted on CBS's Face the Nation, he hasn't got the vaguest clue about how to stop homegrown terrorists, no matter whether they are ISIS sympathizers or sovereign citizens, apparently. When John Dickerson pointed out that the attack in France came from a French-born citizen and asked Kelly what he could learn from that, Kelly threw his hands in the air, verbally at least. He answered, obviously, you got the homegrown terrorists. I don't know how to stop that. I don't know how to detect that. Because I guess with the special infrared glasses they give these guys, they don't see the white hoods. They just disappear. There's nothing there. There's no terror there.
Right.
But if somebody's brown, they glow. They glow. I mean, it's like a total signature. Jeez. Good thing, I guess. Let me give a little bit of background on the French-born citizen who was involved in a supposedly terrorist attack. He had just gotten out of jail for trying to, kill another police officer. And at the time this person went to jail, it wasn't ascribed to any ISIS connection or terrorist connection. But to the simple fact that this particular anti-authoritarian type just didn't like cops. And the background on the fellow is that he stewed while in stir. Until that time, he could be released and he could take out his obsession because cops represent. It wasn't necessarily, I don't know how to call it racial or not. But it was convenient to latch on to, as Le Pen did, this is what is happening to French society, and it's all the cause of the people pouring in over the borders. And people are saying, yeah, but, he's like several generations here. Come on. Okay. And it is Europe. Staying with the Trump party line, Kelly turned back to the border. you've got other terrorist threats that come across the border, Kelly said. I believe in the case of the murder and the Paris shooting, I believe he was homegrown. But again, there are so many threats that come in across the border. Microscopic terrorist brown threats from Mexico, Costa Rica, by way of Costa Rica, by the way, and points from further south where they're even more filthy. Filth. Oh, I was ascribing that particular opinion to Kelly, but really is this reporter's opinion about what Kelly is thinking, if there's any confusion out there. Dickerson pressed him on homegrown terrorists a little later, but Kelly stuck to his talking points. It is a big threat. Is it the number one threat? I think it's the most common threat, he insisted. I think the appeal I would make on the homegrown threat is if you see something, say something. And maybe we'll get to it. After we've taken away your health care to fund this wall to keep out the filth pouring over our borders. Okay. Caroli sums up, here's what I think. I think homegrown terrorists, especially white, gun-toting haters, don't fit the urgency of fomenting hatred against brown people. So Kelly is going to stay on those talking points, demonizing families and hardworking people who are undocumented rather than admit his own lack of desire to take on the threat of domestic terrorism right here at home. And the Cato Institute notes a GAO report. The Cato Institute is not known for their liberal bias. Wink. Says that 71% of terrorist attacks in the U.S. came from far-right extremists. No Muslim connection at all. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, facts don't matter. It's what it feels like we're being invaded by microscopic terrorists. And if you're wondering how I got to the microscopic terrorists, it's a riff on Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle with the microscopic Chinese, okay? We were being invaded by microscopic Chinese, and it was like a conspiracy theory that people believed in the context of the book. Also, the great theme out of Cat's Cradle is everything you know is wrong, okay? So keep that in mind. Oh, my. Okay, Jeff Sessions. I love that. 2 races to be a judge. Let's make him a cop. Okay, let's. And this is by Alan Pike out of Think Progress. Attorney General Sessions, who has more power over how American law is enforced than any other single living human being, is concerned about New York City. The nation's largest population center continues to see, quote, gang murder after gang murder. Or let's see, let me put it this way. Gang murder after gang murder, Sessions' office said in a statement on Friday, attributing the putative murder apocalypse to the city's commitment to, wait for it, humane treatment of undocumented immigrants. New York is a sanctuary city. They're giving safe harbor to the people we're trying to demonize. You get in our way, there will be repercussions. And I think it's because we just got to hear, I think what they call a failure to communicate. 8.5 million people live in New York City. New York City had 335 murders in 2016. That sounds like a lot in relative terms, but that's down from 352 in 2015. And it is the second lowest murder rate in New York City history, tied with 2013 and just behind 2014's all-time low of 333. Shootings also are down below 1,000 last year for the first time on record. This leaves 3 possibilities. 1, Jeff Sessions is dishonest. Well, okay. 2, Jeff Sessions is illiterate. Well, that goes without saying. Or 3, Jeff Sessions tried to say something true about New York City and murder, but thanks to a witch's curse placed on him as a young man, is doomed to have all his attempts at communicating with the outside world filtered through the time portal back to the actual crime-frenzied 1970s. Now, surprisingly, that is not in this reporter's opinion, though I hold that opinion. That was written by Alan Pike. I concur. At least one of these three things is true about Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, who is and will indefinitely remain the single most powerful law enforcement official in the richest nation on the only planet known to host intelligent life forms within our entire universe, Pike continued. Well, I would say that it's not one of those three things. It's probably all three. He's dishonest, he's illiterate, and a witch's curse was placed upon him in which he sees the whole world from the worldview of the 1970s. And I got to tell you, my view of the 1970s is a little bit more, shall we say, benign. But I think the kind of movies he was watching, sitting around probably playing poker with a negligee under the KKK robe. You know it. All right, let's get to our Jim Hightower break, and we'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar, and finish up with the last half. You are listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Wink and Justice, and we will be right back. Indeed, we are back, and thank you for sticking with us in spite of that technical glitch. For some reason, the meters were not, or the volume was not catching.
Right.
For Hightower there, so we apologize for hopefully you didn't have to turn up your volume and get blasted out when we came back. So this is the After Show with Wink and Justice. Justice here along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the West Coast. Wink is in upstate New York 21 on the East Coast. Our crew are the ethereal creatures, though they tried their hardest to, because we're down to the skeleton crew at the morning here. But they are the ethereal creatures who reside in the cloud whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio. And thus, by extension, the After Show to span the globe, the universe, and beyond. Woo-hoo.
Yes. Indeed.
Suddenly, I started getting the little tickle of a sneeze in my nose, so I'm hoping that will just pass. Okay. Today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Codes community calendar is facilitated by Chi-Town Kev. And he opens the diary calendar today with, are you an adrenaline junkie? And I don't know. I think when I did like dangerous athletic type things, I don't know if it was for the adrenaline. Maybe. I don't know. I do remember, and I've mentioned this before, that I would do things like surf, for instance. And I would surf a longboard on fairly large waves, over 20 feet, which are big enough, I got to tell you. And I was held down, particularly for long periods of time. You hope that you don't get beat to heck across coral. You always hope that that doesn't happen. But the other one is getting pushed down so far and you can't really get back up. You just got to sort of wait for it. And I remember thinking when I was a kid, I always thought surfing would be fun. When I was a kid in Oregon, I dreamed about moving to California and stuff. So when I was 10 and we did, one of the first places we went, because, it's the summertime, I said, we got to go to the beach. And I had this really cool diver's mask that I thought that I'm going to wear this when I like body surf. I'm going to body surf in the waves. I'm going to wear this mask and I'll be able to see what's going on. And I had this mask for years, just dreaming about getting to California. So when he finally did, the first time I jumped in the ocean to body surf with my mask on, it sucked the mask off. I never saw it again. So I remember thinking, wow, this icon of getting to the beach, it's, it wasn't really like what I expected. And so then I grew up and there would be times where I thought I was drowning. And I always thought, drowning's not fun. Surfing is supposed to be fun, but drowning doesn't seem like fun. And that extended to other aspects. You fall off of a 10-foot rock face a few times. You're thinking, I'm not falling off a 100-foot rock face. I'm not even getting up to 100 feet. Screw that. I'm walking up the backside on the trail with the tourists. So I think my adrenaline junkie stuff waned. I think I got over it. I like to do things that are fun. I love skiing, Wink. Of course, I never went snow skiing until I had my first 2 knee surgeries, and the doctor said I shouldn't go skiing. And I said, what?
Yeah.
Did you say I should not go snow skiing? It was fun. I wasn't, there was no way I could do, I tried to do moguls, but that wasn't really what I like to do. I just like to point my skis downhill and go fast.
There you go.
And then I could stop. I could stop effectively. But I the idea of carving, that hurt. Okay, Wisconsin Cossacks are forming their group. So Cosmail Chris the Colladem, if you would like to become a member of Wisconsin Cos. New England Cossacks are having their spring 2017 Cheers and Jeers Cossack meetup on Saturday, April 29th at noon at Flatbread Pizza in Portland, Maine. Cosmail NHOX 42 to RSVP for a seat. And the People's Climate March on 4/29. There's going to be many sister marches for that, and all of the contacts for those sister marches and their times can be had at the Connect Unite Act Daily Co's community diary. Daily Co's Asheville will be meeting up on Saturday, May 6th at 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Salvage Station, 466 Riverside Drive in Asheville. Cosmail Randall to RSVP, and Cosmail Thinking Fella and Ojibwa, who are organizing the 3rd annual Epic Glacier National Park meetup. You'll need to see a diary for important planning details, of course. And summing up here, the Cheers and Jeers annual Netroots Nation Cheers and Jeers dinner will be on Wednesday this year, of course, in Atlanta. Wednesday, August 9th at 5:30 p.m. Cosmail Navajo to RSVP, and a place will be determined as the list grows. And that is your Connect Unite Act Daily Co's community calendar for the 24th of April of 2017. Hey, Navajo was in New York City yesterday at Spitzer's Corner, and our rowing girl was there, and yes. We say hello, or as we like to colloquially say, hi, right back at you, Navajo.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Thank you. Yeah, fun was had by all. Quite turnout there, and that's a neat part of town too.
Yep.
So, or as they like to say, the city.
There you go.
But yeah. I have an affection for your big city there, so we call it a town.
Yeah.
Part of town. Alrighty. Adrenaline junkie. Boy, I'm like, yeah, actually, give me a shot of adrenaline just to get down to get the paper at the end of the walkway. Will you please?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Adrenaline junkie. You know where any is around? Is it very expensive?
Exactly, yeah. I'll take some of that.
When I was a jock, it did cross my mind that maybe there's not an infinite amount of heartbeats in your life, that there's really just a set number. And maybe exercise is making more beats happen than, that crossed my mind. And I thought, nah, that's stupid. We have an infinite amount of heartbeats. Come on. Jeez. It's a finite amount of heartbeats. But I think that probably, making your heart strong is a good idea anyway.
Yeah. Yep. No question.
That's what I think. Well, the big epiphany occurred to me at a fairly young age because I was a young father. And when my son was born, I got rid of my hang glider. I sold my motorcycles. I kept the surfboards. you know. That was around the time I decided I'm not going to climb, rock faces more than 10 feet. Because, like I said, you don't see very many old rock climbers free climbing up a rock face.
No.
Because they know what it's like to fall off at a low height, right? 6 feet hurts. Falling off 6 feet, sometimes you get scraped up. So there's no way falling from 20 feet, you break legs at that point, Especially, if you don't hit right,
oh yeah, you
can't roll.
Hips.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So you do that a few times and you go, I got lucky. I just sprained something or I just dislocated something. You do that a few times, it's like, so like rock climbing, I really stopped doing that. I mean, we did some stuff, but like I said, not much more than 10 feet or so. I never really found enjoyment in climbing those walls that they built, like in Southern California and in the Bay Area at gyms and, clubs, the climbing wall.
Yep.
I suppose if I got on that when I was a real little kid, we used to climb trees. So it was, I don't know, a little bit different. But by the time that those came about, I was like, I'm not breaking my hip. Forget that. What else? I mean, I got rid of the motorcycles. Of course, I mentioned the hang glider. There was all sorts of, I suppose, dangerous physical activities that I was involved in that I thought would probably be unwise, because if I lived some catastrophe, well, then I might be hooked up to a bunch of tubes, and that just didn't seem like a good interaction to have with a family. And I was just kind of like a young kid at the time myself, early 20s, Life teaches you. Everything can go wrong, Wink. Everything can go wrong.
Yeah.
And I suppose the big secret is, how you adapt. When everything's going wrong, can you get back up there and, keep swinging even though you're batting 180?
Right, exactly.
Because you're going to get to 230 eventually. You just got to keep swinging. People go, 230, that sends you back to the minors. And you go, yeah, but at least it's the minors.
Yeah, at least you're starting somewhere. Yeah.
There you go. Well, carrier workers aren't too happy. And why should they be? But, it's like what Driftglass says. Liberals, right on everything since before your grandma was born. We told them this was going to happen. But no, don't listen to us. We're just a bunch of hippies. We keep saying we're not hippies, we're punks. You look like a hippie punk to me, same thing. This is by Sarah K. Burris, or as we like to refer to her, and she is referred to in the Netroots Radio Style book as the great Sarah K. Burris.
Heck yeah.
At Raw Story. You find her regularly as a guest on Irreverent Testimony. Donald Trump made a deal to save the jobs at the Carrier plant in Indiana, but workers lost their jobs to Mexico anyway. Ha, ha, ha. That's Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those suckers. They always believe me. They always do. 56-year-old Jim Shalley doesn't want to complain, but things are not going well. I'm a routine guy. I'm not boo-hooing, he said, but I feel used up. Yeah, you ought to be. Unfortunately, Jim is not alone. His colleague Pat is still working for Carrier, but with production ending just after Christmas, she knows her days are numbered. She's been with the company for 40 years after graduating from high school, as did her daughter, who is now 33 years old. Sorry, I'll say it's Monday.
Yeah.
I loved my job, she said. It's all I've ever known. And, all kidding aside, what we did in this country that elevated, because it used to be like a high school education was like the pinnacle of one's, it was a gateway to social mobility.
Yeah, even back in our day, high school degree would get you
and
a
I'm just
job
saying,
somewhere.
I'm just saying that we produced a marketplace in which someone with a high school diploma or not,
right,
could get a job in which you could buy a car, a house, support your family, and send your kids to college.
Yep.
And maybe they, with their college degrees, could make the world better for themselves and the world.
Right.
With their college degrees.
A twofer, yeah, exactly right.
And then somewhere along the line, we looked at the checkers at the supermarket saying, they get a middle class wage. They own a house. How are they deserving to have a house?
Yeah, how dare they?
Yeah, how dare they? You work on an assembly line. You make enough money to buy a house. And we put people like that into the category of leeches. They are leeching off of the rest of us, whoever the rest of us are. I don't know. Sounds like a Russian plot to me.
Yeah.
But hey. Okay, back to Sarah K. Burris. While then Governor Mike Pence bribed Carrier with a hefty tax break deal, instead of 1,400 jobs heading to Mexico, that number was more like 800, both Jim and Pat thought they'd be okay. But the plant in Huntington was not part of the deal. The so-called Buy American mandate and federal infrastructure projects Trump has promised also wouldn't do anything to help. Yeah, I suppose you don't really need to have like a forced air unit on the freeway and a bridge, maybe. Huntington remains strong in manufacturing, however, with 21% of the city working in the industry. To put that in context, 90% of the counties in the U.S. don't even reach that. Yet most of the workers don't blame Trump for being unable to save their jobs despite taking credit for doing so. See, this is what I don't understand. Because I think the one aspect that's not really being spelled out here is that we don't mind losing our jobs because he promised to kick brown and black people's ass. And we can blame all the woes that we are experiencing now and blame them for it. It's their fault. Instead of the captains of industry being so greedy that they offshored so much stuff so that, I'm sorry, you can't make enough money to own a house anymore. Sorry. And they go, but we just like him. You know, he says what we feel. And what is it that they feel then? And I don't know. How do I make nice with that? It's just so hard. Okay. Well, workers did say they saw it as a slap in the face after she and her colleagues made the company billions in profits. But he promised that he was going to kick some brown and black people's butts. And for what we could tell, he's kind of fulfilling that promise. Oh, you don't have a job anymore. Well, I don't know. There's some things that are of greater value, I suppose. And they have value. Time is money. And I think racial hatred might be too. Second round of the French elections is going to be the biggest grudge match in the history of, I don't know. We'll see. One thing that I do know about the French, and I apologize if this is a sweeping generalization, but bear with me. But the educational system is set up to, pump out a particular kind of French mind. And you can find that in various countries. The Germans also have a particular educational system. I would say somewhat different than the French, of course. I mean, and the Japanese have one that's even more, I would consider ominous, meaning that by the time you're 3 years old, they determine whether you're going to be an industrial worker or an intellectual academic. 3 years old. Germany, the demarcation is around junior high on our standard. You either get tracked for vocation or university.
Right.
There's more of an all-encompassing French educational system that doesn't necessarily push people into vocations or what we would call the humanities. They're incorporated both. But the French educational system and the exalted job that one would want to hope to get would be one of engineer. And so there is a bit of an engineer's mindset here. And the French look at things that are inefficient as not being a really great way in which to govern. And one of those inefficiencies is blind racial hatred. And they've always been attuned to that, especially since after the French Revolution, because blind racial hatred came out of, the aristocracy, because it wasn't just racial at the time. It could have been religious or whatnot, but it was blind. It was arbitrary, and it propped up power for a little while at the expense of the whole. Terribly inefficient because people starved and, the whole thing. So I think what might save France in this is, once again, recognizing the terrible inefficiencies of racial hatred, animosities towards specific identifiable groups. But that's in this reporter's opinion and some of my observations from being a Francophile. Second round. Oh, this is by Eric Maurice out of the EU Observer. Second round of the French presidential election on 7 May will amount to a referendum on the far right and the EU after traditional left and right parties were eliminated. Emmanuel Macron, a social liberal who campaigned with the French and European flags, will face Marine Le Pen, who wants to take France out of the euro and organize a referendum on EU membership. Macron, age 39, a former economy minister, finished ahead in the election's first round yesterday, Sunday, with 23.9% versus 21.7% for Le Pen. This is the first time that the Socialist Party and the center-right Republicans Party are both absent in the runoff. Bar a major upheaval, Macron will be the new French president, as he will most likely benefit from a so-called Republican front where voters from the left and right unite to block the far right. This is one thing that we don't see necessarily here, is the coalition building that goes on in French politics. And I will proffer once again that the French affinity for, I have to say, even the term egalitarian has almost an engineer connotation to it. What benefits the whole? So that's why you have these coalition buildings, because Marine Le Pen represents a more recent aspect of French history called World War II.
There you go. Yep.
In which collaborators to the Nazis, the Vichy Republic, she denies there was any collaboration that went on between the Nazis and the French. That what did go on was treason to the Republic by backing the communists and, the terrorists, I suppose. I mean, she doesn't say that, but she basically says France made a mistake not backing Germany. Isn't that nice? So first poll on Sunday said that Macron would beat Le Pen with a 62 to 38% outcome. And once again, this is only in 2 weeks now, May 7th. Things come fast and furious, so it's a little bit more difficult to gum things up. Over the weekend, also, I should note that, we can deny Russian influence on our own elections, that it just was organic and Hillary was flawed and any number of arguments and stuff. The fact remains is that the rest of the world saw what happened here, and they set up precautions, or at least ways in which to be able to flag influences and Russian influence in the ways of monies exchanged and fake propaganda sites, bots, the whole deal. Was fast and furious leading up to this runoff on Sunday. And people were aware of it and on guard, as they would say, on guard. Second round will be a vote for or against Europe. Marie Sixt, Macron supporter, told EU Observer as she was waiting for the candidate's speech on Sunday, it's not a matter of person, but of program. The question of France or for France is, what do we do? Which I, once again, proffer is kind of an engineering attitude. You know, it's not about a person. It's about how we can make the machinery of government work so that everybody benefits.
Right.
What do we do? How do we maintain it? How do we build it? If you're proposing something else and you put a leg up there that's just made out of hollow balsa, when we need the impervious girders of the Eiffel Tower, Eiffel we call it, but it's really the Eiffel. What do you do? And Macron is a bit savvy, though apparently they keep saying that he has no political experience. But I would say being an economy minister gives you a little bit of, entree into the world of politics, shall we say. Or as the French would say, entree. So he turned Le Pen's words back on her when he said he would be the president of patriots against the threat of nationalists. There are not several of France's. There is only one. The France of patriots in a Europe that protects, and that we have to rebuild it, he insisted. Le Pen conspicuously did not mention the EU in her speech on Sunday, but she said that she now had the immense responsibility to defend the French nation, its unity, its security, its culture, and its independence, she said. It is time to free the French people from arrogant elites that want to tell it what to do, she said, using the language he usually uses to refer to France's EU membership. Said was mainly at stake was the wild globalization that endangers our civilization. She called on voters to choose France, borders that protect our jobs and our spending power, our security, and our national identity. And that pretty much resonates even among the rural whites in France. Heard that and said, no way. No, Grandma still remembers those days. She was riding in her grandpa's mail, or when they were delivering mail. She sat in the basket in the front on the bicycle. She remembers exactly what happened then. So, receiving more than 7 million votes in the first round, Marine Le Pen did much better than her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, when he qualified for the runoff in 2002 with 4.8 million. And at that time, Jean-Marie Le Pen, that amount of votes sent shockwaves through France at the time. And big demonstrations occurred, and Jacques Chirac eventually won with 82%. So voting for, let's see, there are some people that think that maybe because of his centrist policies that maybe he might not necessarily be the best. Some people consider Macron to be, maybe too conservative. Others consider him to be too liberal. And I think compared to Marine Le Pen, he might just be right, in this reporter's opinion. All right, we'll come back here tomorrow, bright and bushy, and have our visit with Chris Reeves. Stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day. We'll have William Orbit's Montauk Point filling in the interim before Tom Hartman comes up about 6 minutes after the hour. So continue listening to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. And why? Well, of course, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink. I will see you on the other side.
All right. Rope.